Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining here. I know there's probably some faces in here that we know, probably some new ones. So let me first introduce myself. My name is James Nord. I started this company 8 years ago. And so when we launched, we were the first influencer marketing platform in the world. It was, 2012 when I started building it, 2013 when we launched it. We're about 50 people now here in, I should maybe plug my headphones in, you guys can hear me better. 50 people in New York City. We have run over 3,000 campaigns. That $28 million number is wrong. I think it's probably closer to $35 million that we have paid out to on our platform. So, been living and breathing this stuff for well over a decade. I'll spare you the long version of my story, but I started many, many years ago as a Tumblr kid. I don't really know. We weren't calling ourselves influencers then. This was like 2008. And, my experience there and my difficulty in kind of getting in touch with brands and seeing that, even back in 2012, that brands were looking to find more bloggers to work with at the time, bloggers, prompted me to start Fohr. So we've been doing this for quite some time. And I think what keeps the job so exciting is that, the industry and the market changes so much. And it means that, the things that really mattered, certainly 8 years ago when we started, don't matter so much anymore. And even some of the stuff that mattered at the beginning of last year is less important now. And today I just want to walk through 10 of the things that we're really paying attention to currently and how some of that is made possible by the technology that we have here at Fohr. So first, we switched from saying we're an influencer marketing company to an ambassador marketing company last summer. And the reason we did that was a few things. One, influencer marketing got too transactional. If I saw another sponsored post from an influencer that I knew the product they were saying they loved, they didn't love, I was going to scream. And I think that because it got too transactional, it just wasn't really working. And because it wasn't working, it was too expensive. And, as I pulled that thread out and said, okay, what's this going to look like in a couple of years? We could have just kept doing what everybody else was doing and been fine, probably for a few years. But, what fun is that? And that doesn't really make a huge amount of sense. So we kind of pivoted to what we found was working, which was, what we call ambassador marketing, which has a number of rules, actually another 10. There's 10 rules for ambassador marketing, and you can download those on our homepage, or we can send it along after this, but just kind of explains how we think about ambassador marketing. And this is also, welcome, the first time I've done this deck, so we're going to have maybe a little bit of flipping back and forth, but we're going to get it through together. It's going to be great. So we switched to ambassador marketing, and again, number of things that y'all should be thinking about as you are building campaigns or working with influencers this year. And I think that the first thing to note is there is no perfect influencer, right? Like every influencer that you could work with, could be perfect for one project and totally wrong for another. I think I was explaining this to a client the other day, and I was like, it's like if somebody said, well, we need to hire an actor because we've got this movie. So they go to an agent and they're like, give me an actor. And, that agent comes back and gotten Daniel Day-Lewis to come out of retirement. And he's like, wants to work on this project. And they're like, oh, well, I mean, this is a like coming of age, like weed comedy. And like, really, we're looking for like Seth Rogen, right? Both great. Daniel Day-Lewis, Seth Rogen, both great. Would never probably be working on the same project. And it's the same for influencers, right? Like there is no perfect one. There's, macro influencers aren't better than micro influencers, aren't better than nano influencers. And the way that we pick influencers at Fohr for our clients is, we first have to understand, what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? What problems are you trying to solve? What things are you trying to turn around? What are you looking to achieve? And then what is the strategy that we can, help you come up with to achieve that? And then what are you willing to spend? And then once we have all of those things, influencer selection really is the crystallization of all of that, and especially strategy. Select needs to be a reflection of your strategy, not of your personal taste. And I think that where a lot of brands go wrong is they leave out that part and they say, what's my budget and who are my influencers? Or even worse, they say, here are the influencers I want to work with. What do I need to pay to get them? And that leads to, campaigns that don't work, to products that don't make sense for an influencer and their audience, and the kind of influencer marketing that caused us to say, like, hold up, we don't feel like this is what we need to be doing anymore, and we need to change it. And where it boils down to is again, who's this influencer? What do they care about? Who's the audience? What do they care about, right? Like, we are trying to sell product, your products, right? Your clients' products. And that is the goal. And our goal is not to create a high engagement post, not to create something beautiful. It is to create something compelling that is going to convince people to spend money on a product, good, or service. And we need to make sure that this is the right person to deliver that message and that they're delivering it to the right audience. And, the tools that we have built over the last 8 years are trying to answer these questions. And the things that, we've got planned built for the rest of this day and these things. So first thing that we're thinking about, is this idea of fake love. And I think we've all, again, seen those influencer posts that are clear. They're doing it for the money, that, they don't have any brand affiliation or love. And it's, it just doesn't work. I think the is passion and belief. And if you really even think about authenticity, right? Something that gets kicked around a lot in the influencer space. What does authenticity mean? It means honesty, right? It starts with honesty and truth. And so working with people that don't care about your brand is a waste of money. And of course we have to, at times, we're breaking into new markets or whatever it might be. And we work with influencers that aren't existing customers, of course. That happens. But all things being equal, wouldn't we prefer to work with people that already love your brand? And that's why, one of the first things our team does is content search. So add content that they've created across the platforms they've connected to Fohr. And that allows us to, for instance, if you wanted to see anytime somebody had mentioned James Nord, you can search James Nord and you can see all the content that has mentioned that. So you can search for your brand, you can search for other people's brand, but it allows you to start, building an authentic story by understanding if this person actually cares about you at all. Number two is what is the relationship the influencer has with their audience? We often talk about the difference between audience and influence, right? That, like, if you take two accounts with 100,000 followers, one account might have the ability to influence that audience's purchase habits, and another one might just be people that like to follow that person, right? And they don't actually have much sway. And so, something that we do in the technology is that we try and pull out what is that relationship the influencer has with their audience. And we actually ask influencers to share a link. When they share that link, their followers can come on to Fohr and can leave them essentially reviews. And so here are some from Grace Atwood, an influencer we've worked with many times. It's great. I think she has over 1,000 testimonials on Fohr. But you get a sense of why, again, that first question, why do people follow her? Like, why do they care? And I think it's important to know why people follow somebody, because sometimes if they follow them because they're famous, right, for something else, because they were on TV or they're a sports star, or whatever it might be, that might mean they don't care about, what they have to say about skincare. If they follow this person because they are genetically gifted and they're just like insanely beautiful. And sometimes it's nice to just see ridiculously good looking people pop into your feed. They might have great engagement and they might have a big following, but again, does their audience actually care about the products they are using and the things that they're endorsing? Whereas if you look at Grace Atwood, who's built a following off of giving people advice on her blog for years, and you read the testimonials, you really do see that people are following her because of her product recommendations, because they're interested in what she has to say about books or skincare or home goods or The Bachelor, whatever it might be. They actually care. And we're always trying to create technology that can help you understand, does this person have an audience or do they have real influence? The third thing is letting go of likes. This has been a long journey for us, but engagement, likes and comments are important, but what we're really interested in is reach. So here's an example of the top part of one of our profiles, and you can see Javal here is great, has 30% reach. So he is reaching on average 30% of his followers when he posts. That is about double what influencers at his following generally do. So his reach is quite good. But engagement is not a great metric for understanding performance. And part of the reason is that what we're trying to do, right, is make these posts memorable, and as I said, make them persuasive. And if you think to yourself about the last time you scrolled Instagram, whether it was earlier in the day, there's probably a lot of posts that you can recall and you remember that you didn't like. And I actually encourage people to go into their settings. And if you go into Instagram settings and then account, there's something that says posts you've liked. And if you go and look at the posts that you've liked, usually there's not many. You're usually liking close friends posts or something like that. But it's much, the number of posts you like is so much fewer than the ones that you remember. And for us, that's what's important, is making it memorable, making it persuasive, and getting it in front of as many people as possible, which is why we focus on reach, as our kind of core metric of what we're looking at, rather than engagement. These are numbers of reach for stories. The average story reach is about 5% until the accounts get quite large, and then it goes down. So again, 100,000 followers, only 5,000 are seeing the story, so it's pretty small. Why reach is so important? I think this visualization kind of works. So 2 accounts, 100,000 followers, same engagement, right? Let's say that's what 50% reach looks like versus 10%. So a big difference. So for these to be equal, the account on the right would have to do 5 posts. And so there is a really big incentive for you to be prioritizing reach in the influencers that you select, because if you have a campaign with 10 people and 2 of them have bad reach, it can really wreck the overall numbers. But there are also influencers out there that are getting 70, 80, 90% reach on their posts, and are an account to 50,000 followers who are reaching as many people as most accounts with 250,000 followers. So there's a lot of really great value when you start prioritizing reach. Now, those numbers only come through Instagram's business API. It's those are the numbers that we pull in through Fohr. So you will need a platform such as ours to get those reach numbers, or you can ask influencers to send them before you work with them. If you don't have a subscription to Fohr, if you don't become a client, if you are ever giving someone a paid contract, especially over $10,000, absolutely get their reach numbers, because there are huge fluctuations in where people are. Managing ad fatigue. We see something like 1,200 brand messages a day now. It's wild. Getting through that noise is really hard. We talked about how we're trying to create memorable content that actually connects with an audience. But it's also important to know what is going on in this feed, right? Like there is a thing that's kind of unique about influencer marketing is that there is essentially endless ad space, because they can always create another post. And so, if you think of why is advertising in the Super Bowl so expensive? Well, because obviously 100 million people watch the Super Bowl. That's a huge audience. And then there's a finite amount of commercials that they can sell. And so they're working with that equation of what's the most amount of commercials I can sell without pissing people off. But that number is not infinite, but with influencer, it can be. And so it's up to the influencer to protect their audience. On Fohr's platform, you can see, if you go back to this here, actually, you can see like Javal's at 19.3% of his feed is sponsored. It's a pretty good number. We look for under 25% if we can. But there are influencers who have 50% sponsored content, and it doesn't really matter how good the ad is. 50% sponsored is a lot, and so it's important as a brand looking for influencer partners to know, how many times has this audience been advertised to in the last week or 2 weeks, and are they going to be open to seeing another ad, or is my sponsored content that I work on with them going to be the one that finally gets them to throw their hands up and be like, oh my gosh, this is too much, right? And so really important to be able to look at the percentage of that feed that's sponsored when you're looking for partners. These are numbers that we pulled together last year with later in a report that we did of what percentage of feeds were generally sponsored. So generally influencers do a good job, but obviously, as we get a bigger following, we get higher percentages of sponsored content. There are different kinds of engagement metrics. Again, we talked about reach versus engagement and how we prioritize reach, but there's other things that we look at, one being saves. Saves is something that for the end user is hugely important and feature that's used all the time, but surprisingly for brands is something that they're not super focused on. But getting someone to save a post is amazing. One, it does drive a bit of the algorithm, but also, especially if someone's saving a product post, I think what that tells you is that they're saving it because they're interested in purchasing that product later, right? They want to remember it, and so this is especially true of beauty, that we are often looking at saves on their product posts to see, those influencers that have really high save numbers, because our assumption is their audience is saving that so that they can go shop. And we've talked to, for instance, like Sephora employees and heard that behavior, that people will come in and they'll have, they'll bring out their phone and they'll show their saved posts and say like, where's this? I want to see this. I want to buy that. So that's behavior that users are engaging in. That's important to understand. 6, we have to add something to the world. I think that this is actually one of our ambassador rules, and it's not a metric per se, but I think it's a certainly a metric for success. You know, none of us want to create noise as a job, right? We want to add value in some way to the world, and I think that you know, with our sponsored posts, we have to make sure that we're thinking about not just, you know, how's this working between me and the influencer, but, you know, is the end consumer of this content, the followers, are they going to find this valuable? Is this going to impact their life in any way? We'll often say that, you know, posts need to inspire, entertain, or educate someone. So is it doing that? Is it helping them learn something about skincare? Is it, you know, helping them laugh and for a moment forget about a tough day they had? Is it inspiring them to, you know, change their routine and wake up a little earlier and go work out in the morning? What is it doing for that audience member? Because, you know, influencers are really, you know, essentially like taking a toll for you to gain access to those followers. But again, I'm always surprised how those followers aren't part of the conversation when we're talking about these posts. We're not asking ourselves, are they going to care about this? Why should they care? Am I giving them anything? Is this doing anything for this audience, or is this all about my brand? You know, is this all about the influencer? We need to make sure we're giving something back in some way. And one thing we think about with this is captions. So, you know, I think that there is a understandable kind of focus on imagery on Instagram specifically. And even in the briefing documents, you know, if you look at briefs, like usually it's all about, you know, what's the image, what's the tone of this image, what's the lighting supposed to be, how do I want you to shoot it, all that. And there's less about the caption, but ideally, like an image should get you to stop, right? If you're going through the feed, we've actually run studies, and people usually spend a second to a second and a half on a post, right? And you'll see they're flicking, they stop, flick, stop, flick, stop, flick, stop. Every fifth post or so, they will read the caption. Okay, so goal number one for you is get them to stop and read the caption. And then that caption needs to be the thing that actually kind of sells the product. And, you know, influencers sometimes are not putting enough effort into those captions, and brands are often not giving influencers enough flexibility with those captions to tell a story, you know, because again, stories are what convince people. It's not facts, it's stories. That's how we create emotional connection. That's how we make something real. That's how we allow people to put themselves into our shoes and understand these things. And we need to tell stories, not just lift stuff up, you know, a bunch of brand facts. And we've seen this in the work that we do, that longer captions are performing better. Captions are just getting longer in general. So you can see this trend over the last few years, that people are writing longer captions. And it's because I think that's, you know, it's been hugely important in one, communicating why this brand partnership is authentic, why it makes sense. But two, again, making sure that they're giving something back. They're teaching you something. They're telling you an interesting story. They're doing something for you as the follower. Next is understanding what's performing best. So there's a section on the 4 profiles of most engaged content. Here is mine. So it's usually like, it appears to be either me in a tuxedo, my girlfriend or my puppy are the things that are currently working for me. But it's really interesting when start to look at these blocks. So on our profiles, we've got most engaged content and recent sponsored content. And it's really, it's interesting to look and say what is working here. Because, while I said before, likes is not a great metric for understanding success, it does drive reach because it drives the algorithms. So we want to know what an audience is connecting with, and we want to, to try and replicate that in the posts that we do. And so being able to really quickly look at that most engaged content is going to, I think, give you a sense of what works here. If you actually looked into these posts, most of them are getting this engagement from me personally, not because of the photo, but because they have a much longer caption. I'm telling some story or something. And so in this case, if you for some reason felt you needed to work with me on a project and you were able to access this block, you'd be like, okay, like what we need to prioritize for this person is making sure they write something meaty. They tell a story, they write a long caption, because that is what is driving performance, not necessarily what the image is. But again, understanding what's working is really important in trying to replicate it. Audiences also get, as I said, they're looking for a second and a half. They get used to seeing things, and if an influencer does something often, they have a type of content they create. They know it's from that person before they even see the name. And so again, fitting your brand into existing like visual trends or content series that influencer is doing is a really helpful way to make that feel authentic and seamless and not like jarring. What we want to avoid is that feeling, again, as you've scrolled through your Instagram and you see an influencer do a sponsored post that really just doesn't make sense for them, and you just kind of like are taken aback a bit. That's the absolute worst thing. That's what we don't want. So again, understanding what's working is super helpful. This is a new thing, but as you think about metrics, again, when I started this company, Tumblr and blogs were really important. Instagram didn't matter. Then over the years, YouTube and Instagram picked up steam, and then Instagram kind of ran away. In the last 3 years, I'd say 90% of the money that we pay out to influencers was through Instagram. That's changing. I mean, just this year, I think we're trying to do 20% of our influencer payouts, which will be millions of dollars, to TikTok influencers, and make sure that we're working on that platform extensively. But it's not just, it's obviously not just, start pulling people's Clubhouse following into the platform. We already are pulling TikTok into the platform, but do they have a Substack that's well followed? Do they have an OnlyFans? Do they have, there's the new app Dispo that's coming out. Like, where do they have a following? Because Instagram had such a grip on culture for so long, and you can feel that grip starting to loosen. And that's a scary but really exciting thing for the industry. And we're seeing, venture capital dollars flow into social apps in a way that I haven't seen in, the last 8 years, which means that, good money is betting that Instagram is on the way out, and that its seat at the kind of head of the table is starting to seriously be challenged. And I don't think it's going to just be a TikTok, right? Like, TikTok is great, but it can't take, it can't do everything Instagram does, and it just the idea of short video versus imagery is just drastically different. So I think what is happening though, it's just a little bit here. Someone takes this little piece of the pie, someone takes this piece of the pie, someone takes a little bigger piece here. But our job as marketers is to meet our customers where they're spending time. And if your customers are spending time on Clubhouse, you have to think about, is there a way that you can do something interesting on Clubhouse? If they're on TikTok, you got to be on TikTok. And understanding those platforms is really important and really hard, right? Because again, there's only so much you can do, and maybe in your personal life you don't really like Clubhouse. It's hard for me as someone who essentially talks for a living and spends 8 hours a day talking and on Zoom calls. The idea of coming home after that and like making a Negroni and being like, what I want to do is hop on a conference call with a bunch of strangers. That's not super appealing to me personally. It doesn't mean that I can kind of abdicate my responsibility to understanding that platform so that we can help our clients be effective on it. And it's where platforms such as us come in handy, because with 130,000 influencers, we can kind of help you see into places that maybe you aren't naturally looking yourself. Align your values, protect your neck. So this has obviously been a crazy year. And, I think brand safety has become a much bigger issue for our clients and something that they are really, really focused on, understandably. As our influencers, we have in our contracts now, we have morality clauses in all of them, which allow us to drop the influencer if they do something that doesn't align with the values of the brand. Vice versa, the influencer is able to back out of that collaboration if the brand does something that doesn't align with their values. We also hold the right for the clients we run, or the campaigns we run for our clients, to pause content without talking to the client. I think this week we have 90 campaigns or so in market. So if something happens that makes it so our ads aren't going to be effective, we need to be able to pause those without talking to 90 people and waiting for them to approve that. So one, if you're working with influencers on paid work, you should have a morality clause, and you should have the ability to pause things if you're not the client without your client's approval, because we don't want something that's more important to be happening in the world, and your sponsored post goes live and out when XYZ is happening. So that's super important. And that's how we handle things that happen in the future. We have only so much control over that. We can just protect ourselves contractually. But how do we look into the past? I will say that morality vetting is actually a really complex problem from a technology side. So we have the ability to allow you to search all of content. So if you look on my Fohr profile and you search for a curse word, you can see I mentioned it 14 times, which isn't super surprising. My mom says I have a terrible mouth. But you can go and you can look and you can see, have they mentioned, whatever term you feel like you may want to look for. It could be, QAnon or something, whatever, like things, your client or yourself might want to avoid content search. We'll say, we haven't built a morality vetting tool because let's say, even thinking about, the insurrection at the Capitol. I think if an influencer was, really supportive of what happened at the Capitol, that would probably for most of you, I assume, and your clients preclude them from working with you. But it's hard for us to teach technology to figure out who is, who's in support of that and who's not. The context is so important. The way somebody talks about something is so important. And you can take two phrases that are exactly the same, a collection of words, and one person, the way they say it can be massively offensive and can make them be removed from the campaign, and another won't be. That's why morality vetting is really hard, but doesn't mean that it's not important. So we at least give you, a leg up and an ability to search for that, for that specific influencer, pull out a flag. From there, you'll probably, potentially have to do deeper vetting. I would say, for our clients, we don't actually do in-depth, like years long morality vetting. I think unless it was like a $100,000 contract plus, we will, we'll do the more cursory look at the last 6 months. But as we've seen many times, there's often things, especially in people's Twitter past, that are red flags and things that could come as a brand and come back to bite you. So you want to do your homework in understanding, has this person been part of any drama before? Have they said anything that's going to embarrass us? I will say as well on this side, I think for most brands, if something comes to light that was not previously known, especially if it's quite old, I think that most brands don't get severely negatively impacted for working with that person, as long as you distance yourself. I think it's generally the brand's reaction after the offending content is brought to light that determines if there's going to be any kind of lasting negative impact. There's a huge expectation that like every influencer you work with, you should know what they tweeted on March 7th, 2009, and if it is in line with your brand's values. Partner should mirror your audience. I mean, this is, I think for most brands out there, their audience, their customers are, wonderfully diverse in ethnicity, in gender, in sexual orientation, in the place they live, in the things that they're into. And, in the last year, we have seen that advertising, especially influencer marketing, often doesn't reflect that customer base, but sometimes reflects more the individuals who are filling or casting those campaigns, and that's that's a problem that needs to be addressed. We need to make sure that the campaigns that we run are diverse and inclusive, not only because it's the right thing to do, but also because it just works. It works a lot better. And you need to meet your customers where they are. And so that means you have to have a deep understanding of who your customers are and where they're spending their time. And if it's on Instagram or TikTok, the full kind of spectrum of influencers that they would be following on those platforms. Now we try and make it easier for brands to do this. We have ethnicity filters on for those influencers who have self-selected and self-identified their ethnicity. Same with gender and sexual orientation. We don't have those answers for all 130,000 influencers, but we do ask every time somebody signs up if they want to disclose that they can, and we have filters that allow you to filter through that. And I think that's hugely important. Again, just look at Instagram. It's over 1 billion users. How could you possibly, how could you possibly know everyone and be able to find, the exact right people? It's really, really hard. So you need tools to kind of help you supercharge that. Another thing is this new product that we have that's come out, or is kind of out, but is like definitely coming out more this week. We're just like waiting on this press piece to come out, which is like supposed to be in the next couple of days. So you'll be hearing about it. But you can hear about it now from me because, this isn't embargoed. But it's called AMP, and basically what it allows you to do as a brand is create essentially like a careers page for influencers, and create a centralized place where anybody who wants to work with you as an influencer can apply, right? You imagine if the company that you currently work at, if the only way to get a job there was through referral or through like a recruiter, right? That wouldn't really be fair, because then it would be based on relationship. There would be, a lot of bias built into that. And because there was no centralized, place where anybody could apply, there's no way that you could know that you were getting, getting the kind of best people possible. And think about yourself, like the job you have now, did you apply for it? Did you reach out? And some of you probably got recruited, but a lot of you probably applied for those jobs. Imagine if that application didn't exist, right? And that's where we're at in the influencer space. And so what ends up happening is, in my visualization, we have a brand, that's you. All these dots are influencers, right? So that's from this group. In fact, obviously that is much bigger, that group. And if you create a place where people can apply to work with you, you're going to uncover incredible stories. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the Sephora Squad. That's a program that we run. And, our idea was to have Sephora, instead of, going out and just picking 20 people, to say to their audience, hey, if you've ever wanted to apply to be a Sephora ambassador, this is your chance. And, we've had almost 30,000 people apply to be a Sephora ambassador in the last couple of years. We've got it launching again here in the next couple of weeks, which is really exciting. But we saw the power of opening that up, and the incredible like diversity of people that applied, the stories that they told. I think we just realized, like, wow, if we had done this the traditional way and just picked these influencers, we would have probably never found these people, and the people that we did pick wouldn't have been as good. So AMP, helps you solve that, and again, creates that page for you, and allows you to filter and approve or deny ambassadors. And that's, it also connects with our discovery platform, which is the one with 120,000 influencers. So a beautiful way to kind of, work with people, and one, go out and find your own influencers through discovery, but also let people apply to work with you as well. Now, I got through that decently quickly. So, pat me on the back for not being overly loquacious. But I think that is the end. So if there are any questions, we can take a few minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have. You can put them in the QA, you can put them in the chat, or if there are no questions, we also can win back some time for you the rest of the day. I'll just give it a minute or so here to see if anyone has anything. And again, if y'all, are not currently clients, if you haven't seen the platform, again, please just reach out to Emma at Fohr.co, and we will be very happy to show you. Yes, Vanessa, we will also send this presentation. We can also include our 10 ambassador rules as well, which will give you a sense of how we are, the rules that we apply to every campaign that we run. Let's see if there's more here. How do I launch an ambassador program for? So there's a few ways. So we work, again, we make money in a couple of ways. We've got Fohr Discovery, which is the platform we've kind of been talking about today. It helps you find influencers, ambassadors. It's totally self-serve. You do it yourself. You can find them, you can put them in groups, you can reach out, you can brief them, you can report on it. Super powerful tool, but absolutely is self-serve. So if it's like, hey, I want to do this in-house, I don't need any help, that's a great way to do it. AMP is the ambassador management platform. It allows you to, again, go out to your audience, get people to apply for opportunities. It allows you to manage your Instagram DM. Every time someone DMs you, just send them a link to that. They apply through there. You can accept people, again, then brief them, reach out to them, report on it, all that good stuff. Beautiful. Then there are our managed services. Those campaigns start at $50,000 is our minimum. And we would just need to, first understand what your budget is or budget tiers, what the goals are, what the brand is. There's a bunch of questions that we'll ask, and then we'll crank out a proposal. Also, kick that stuff to Emma at Fohr.co if you're interested in campaigns. But we are absolutely very happy to talk about that as well. Question here is, our demographic is women 35 to 60, only Instagram. How do we start to pivot to other platforms? You mentioned, so we're ahead of the curve. That is true and becoming less true all the time. So again, you need to be conscious of where they're spending time. And, I think that like 35 to 60 demographic is coming into social so quickly, and they are so excited about it, and the engagement rates are crazy. And I feel like the performance of those influencers, they do really, really well. I mean, one of the most successful campaigns I think we've ever done from a sales perspective was from, we were targeting, we were working with influencers who were, I think, over 50. So there's a lot of, performance there. I would just say, if you're doing 100% Instagram now, maybe do, in the next couple of months, do 95% and play with, do some TikTok stuff. It's, I think it's important, if for nothing else, than to just practice. You're never going to be, the first time you do something, it's not going to be great. The first managed campaign we ran 6 years ago, was so bad that the client canceled it and asked. I had never run a campaign of any sort before, so didn't really know what we were doing. And now I think that we're one of the best, if not the best in the world at this stuff, and we've run over 3,000 campaigns. So you get better, and especially in new platforms, it's important to just try and get out there and not take it so seriously. The 50K minimum is the influencer's cost and our fee combined. Yes, absolutely. And we take a percentage of that influencer spend, which varies depending on the level of effort that will be needed to do it, strategy, all that stuff. Are there any other questions? So we will send this through. It looks like I have one. Click this QA button and see if this is working. Okay, hold on. Let me just stop sharing this screen. Do you have set fees with each of the influencers? So influencer pricing is really interesting because even an influencer doesn't have a set fee, right? Because every project that you could work on, if you think of an influencer's price, a lot of things are going to affect that. One, how much production do I have to do as an influencer? Are you asking for a full photo shoot, or is this a little simpler? how much affinity do I have for the brand? Am I really excited about it? Or is it a little off brand and I feel like I need more money? Are you purchasing usage rights and using it in ads? That's going to add 50% at least to the cost of the post. Is there exclusivity? If so, for how long? There are so many factors that drive influencer pricing that even for an influencer, there is no standard price, which makes it difficult, honestly, sometimes. Now, we have a pretty good understanding, having paid over $30 million out to influencers, of what is fair and what isn't. And the Fohr platform gives estimates of what we think the range of prices can be for each platform for an influencer. And then the influencer can also go into the platform and set their prices. And so that's like super helpful, and you can actually filter filter through the 130,000 influencers by price as well. So if you have $1,000, we can give you a good sense of who you could get for that $1,000. Okay, I think, is there anything else? No? Oh, here we go. I love it. We keep getting more. I'll take it. So I work in retail and in secondhand high-end e-com. We work with a lot of influencers. Sometimes we reach to them for growth of the platform. Do you think there's a time in the future we could stop investing in influencers and the platform grow by itself? Are we always going to depend on influencers? So here's like, if you think about the next 5 years, and you ask yourself, in 5 years, is my average consumer going to have a bigger following or a smaller following? The answer would be bigger. The world is just moving online. People are building platforms. My mom has like 3,000 TikTok followers. And she's like 60 something, like this is just becoming a bigger part of people's lives. And I do think that, it's really important for brands to try and build community so that they don't have to pay for coverage as much. Because if you have a really active community that's passionate about your products, they're going to talk about them. And you may still have to pay to work with influencers, but you may not have to pay as much. But as people grow these followings, and as, again, people spend more time on these platforms, I think that it's always going to behoove you to be working with those individuals who are influential on those platforms to reach new customers. You think of the kind of what's at the heart of marketing as your job as marketers is like answering the question, do more people know about my brand today than did yesterday? Ideally, then, are those people spending money? But the first thing we're trying to do is just get that to be a yes. We want more people to know about your business, the business you work for, your client's business, than knew about it yesterday. And how do we do that? And I think influencers are, Instagram and TikTok and these social platforms are the most incredible brand discovery platforms potentially ever created. And we are only at the very, very beginning of this. The world is just fundamentally changed in a way that I don't think most people fully appreciate or grasp. And 10 years from now, we are going to laugh at how elementary and simple what we're doing today is, because this is not a fad that's going somewhere. The decentralization of content and power is not a fad. It is a absolute foundational cornerstone of what's happening in the world, and influencers are just a kind of small part of that large trend that's going nowhere. So, okay, well, thank y'all very much for joining. I hope it was helpful. And as always, we are here to answer questions, to walk you through our tools, to turn a proposal around. Really appreciate you all spending an hour with us, and hope to see you in the inbox soon. Thank you.